It feels good to be back for the Winged Eagle podcast on a Saturday. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Winged Eagle podcast, coming at you an hour earlier than usual. And of course, last week, the podcast schedule was goofed up too because I came up here on Sunday. So again, I would like to apologize for the times of the Winged Eagle on the weekends being a little bit different. Post-pandemic work life has been very unpredictable, and I don't have the same smooth, cushy-ass predictable schedule that I used to have that made it really easy for podcast scheduling. So I apologize for the times being all mixed up all the time, but you guys do a great job of keeping up with that, and I appreciate it. This should be, I think, kind of a light episode. We got a ton to get into in terms of wrestling results, especially from this past Wednesday, NXT and AEW, Bash and Fyter Fest, respectively. We had probably one of the worst Smackdowns of all time last night. Not a very good Monday Night Raw, but a lot of matches advertised for this coming up week on Raw 4 specifically, and a big IC title match set for SmackDown, and a couple of matches were added to Extreme Rules. So the future in the next couple of weeks doesn't look too horrible in WWE, but this past week was nothing great other than Wednesday, so we'll be getting into a lot of that. We'll definitely, of course, discuss the ratings win by NXT for the second night of Bash and discuss the implications of that and, some of the arguments going around on social media about that stuff. So that should be fun to get into. Other than that, we'll run through some more results and talk about various wrestling news and notes. We'll talk about a lot of stuff that happened this past Wednesday, like the return of the FTW title, and Keith Lee winning the NXT championship and all of the future possibilities going on there. So other than that, it's going to be relatively light because last week we had a ton of wrestling news to get into. This week, not so much. Just a couple of news tidbits I have written down here. We could talk about more if I wanted to, but in terms of what we discussed on this channel, there wasn't a whole lot to get into except for just a couple of tidbits. So we will be getting into that as well, and we'll just kind of hang out and shoot the shit. I do have a 2-hour time limit on this podcast, so that will be plenty of time to fit everything in. And we're going to open up like we always do with some Patreon shout-outs. I'm going to knock out some super chats and say hello to you guys in the chat. And I want to give you a scheduling update for what you can expect from me this week. I don't know if Dre Leggett is in the chat or not. It doesn't look like he is. I have got to hit him up with an email. My plan was to do a live stream sponsored by Dre, Patreon-sponsored live stream tomorrow night, discussing the various territories back in the day, some of my favorite territory matches and moments and memories that I have. Had all of that scheduled for tomorrow, but like I said, with my crazy post-pandemic work schedule, it's unpredictable, and as it turns out, I'm needed tomorrow at work, and I can't really get out of it. So I'm planning to reschedule tomorrow's live stream for this Thursday night. The only thing is, I have to get up with Dre and make sure that's cool with him. So I will shoot him an email later, make sure that he's okay with that switch and that day works for him, provided that it does. Thursday night will be the night for the Territories podcast and live stream. I'm very, very sorry that I have to move and reschedule that from tomorrow. But you will get me on Monday night as well, immediately following Monday Night Raw, like we do every week, and we'll discuss Raw. So you get me tonight, you'll get me Monday, then you'll get me Thursday, and then, of course, I'll be back next Saturday for the Winged Eagle and Extreme Rules predictions. And then Extreme Rules is next Sunday, 1 week from tomorrow, and I'll be up here to do a live review on that too. So a big week of live streams next week. 4 out of the 7 days I will be up here on YouTube, so we will have fun. Also want to give you guys a shout out to the patrons, of course, all my homies on Patreon that make this channel possible. Try to shout out you guys every week on the Winged Eagle. So first of all, Dre Leggett, want to shout you out first because you've got the next video coming up. Alan Carter, Daniel Rodriguez, Scotty Cura, Brandon Yelverton, Alex Reynolds, Scott Moss, Michael Tong, Nick Musser, Jimmy Anderson, K-Dog's Kennel, Ryan Y, Devlin Husband, I see you in the chat, buddy. I know you're here. Steve Myers, the Double Z TV, I believe that's Zach, Claudio Clavedetcher, John Rediford, Jordan Carr, Barry MK, where you at? You must be here as well. John Riffle, Josiah Blevins, Mr. Steve, Domanian L. Wells Sr., Michael Cuomo, Naveed, Keith Salyers, Nathan Walker, and Blake Moran. thanks again to all of you for all of your support. And as always, all of the $10 per month or more patrons or $200 lifetime pledges are listed in the description below. And starting next week, I'm going to add another little shout-out tier down there to all of the, the super chat awesome dudes that hit us up with all the great donations, because I want to make sure you guys are acknowledged as well, because couldn't do it without you, and I thank you all very, very much. Let me say hello to the chat as well. I haven't said hello to anybody yet. Looks like close to 100 people in here already. Hopefully we'll have a decent audience. And make sure you give this video a like and subscribe if you are not subscribed, so we can keep climbing here on the channel. I want to shout out How Wheezy and Devlin, got my monkey wrenches in here, and Chris Miner, starting out with a $5 super chat. I believe that came in before we even went live, so I thank you for that, Chris. What's up, Greg? What's the worst televised show that you have seen live, such as a Raw SmackDown pay-per-view? Mine was Fastlane 2015 in Memphis. Such a dull show. I know I'm not going to pick the right one because I went to so many Raws and SmackDowns. In my mind, all those shows were really fun. I have fond memories of all of them from, 94 up until 2005 or whenever I stopped going to shows. But the ones off the top of my head that I can remember that were a little duller was probably 1999. I was at WrestleMania 15 and King of the Ring. Neither show was very good. I was also at various Monday Night Raws that year, but I always remember having fun. If my buddy Daniel from North Carolina is in the chat, he can maybe remember better than me some shows that we went to that might have sucked. But I just remember the pay-per-views because I went to 3 pay-per-views in 99. I also went to Unforgiven 99, which was the site of the Kennel from Hell match. So I did not have a good 1999 live, but I'd have to really sit down and think about it to try to come up with the worst shows, because like I said, all my memories are awesome from that time period. But Chris, thank you very much for the $5, man. Appreciate it. Devlin, good to see you, and thanks for shooting over $5 as well. Hope all is well, Greg. Last night's SmackDown was the definition of garbage. I'll have a confession to make about SmackDown. I didn't want to watch it. I was home, but I was kind of tuned out. The last 48 hours, I was completely detached from wrestling. I had a nice little weekend, spent time with my girlfriend, and really just didn't I wasn't on Twitter or anything like that. I just kind of detached, gave myself a weekend because life's been a little bit crazy. So I opted to skip SmackDown. My plan was to watch it when it came on here live for me on the West Coast at 8 p.m. But based on the reaction I was seeing on social media, I was like, holy shit. Plus they had a karaoke segment, and I was like, F this. I am not going to watch it at all. But I kind of changed my mind this morning, and I caught the YouTube clips, but that's it. I was not going to waste my time with that garbage, and it amazes me that they came 1 week off of, although they might have taped that last week, just 1 week removed from the lowest rating that they've ever had. They bounced back with a garbage show like that. The rating was up. It was up, went from 1.9 million up from last week's 1.76 or whatever it was. So they did increase a little bit, but the show was complete trash. And it's almost as if WWE's giving up in the face of the pandemic. On one hand, it looks like they're so lazy and they are just phoning this shit in. But then, on the other hand, when you look at the Extreme Rules card, we have 3 specialty matches booked for that show. Swamp match, bar fight, and eye for an eye. So it's like they are putting some creative efforts into what they're doing, but then on some of their TV shows, it's like they're just, they're literally phoning it in. And it sucks. And last night was god-awful. But at least I was able to spare myself, and because of you guys on social media ripping this show apart, I was like, I'm not going to watch that. If this is the reaction it's getting, even from the more, more stable-minded people were even saying it was trash. So when I hear that, I'm not wasting my time. So we will talk about SmackDown, but we won't talk about it much. And they do have an IC title match listed for next week as well. Matt Riddle taking on AJ Styles. So that ought to be good. Something tells me Corbin's going to get involved in that because Matt Riddle already beat AJ. AJ will get his win back. Corbin will interfere, setting up Riddle and Corbin. Probably, right? Do I have that right? Anyway, we'll get into SmackDown later on. We're going to start with some other stuff, too. We're going to get into wrestling news first because, like I said, it's extremely light, but I do have a couple of interesting tidbits to get into. The first one is happy 100th birthday to Vince McMahon's mother. I keep forgetting that she's still alive. I think I remembered like 2 or 3 years ago that she was still alive and being amazed by that, and I've already forgotten. So when I saw that today was her 100th birthday, Vince McMahon tweeted out a birthday message to her. Wow. And we've all been talking about one day when Vince McMahon gets too old to run the company or gets sick or dies or something like that. This motherfucker might live to be 150 years old. Vince might have only lived half his life by this point. How crazy is that? So happy birthday to Vince's mom. That's amazing. 100 years old. I have a 96-year-old grandmother that is still here, that's still with us, although she doesn't know what the hell is going on. And her health, as far as her body goes, she could make it to 100, but 100 years old is a long time. So happy birthday to Mrs. Vince. There have been rumors of an Evolution 2. WWE was rumored to be holding a show around August 30th, and there has been talk of them doing some sort of a special event like they did within your house and doing some other things to try to spice up pandemic TV, since we're still in the Performance Center. SummerSlam is now going to be there as well. So bringing back Evolution, to me, seems like a good idea. I mean, In Your House was a good idea. Evolution, the first one, was pretty good. There were some pretty good matches on that. I really enjoyed Rousey and Nikki, to be honest with you, if I remember right. There was the show wasn't great, but overall, I thought it was a good representation of women's wrestling, despite the fact that it was not booked very well. And even though they kind of advertised it way ahead of time, it doesn't seem like the matches had a whole lot going on, and WWE was focusing more of their build on like Hell in the Cell or whatever the other pay-per-view was going on at the time. That seemed to be the focal point, and Evolution took a back seat, but Evolution still delivered in terms of the matches in the ring and stuff. So if they're bringing back Evolution to do a second show, why not? Explain to me the downside. We need to do something, so giving us another all-female pay-per-view, trying it again. If In Your House was good, I don't understand why this can't be good. So I am optimistic that if they do go through with that show, whether it's the August 30th date that was rumored or if it's a different time, like they push it to October like they did with the last one, whatever goes on there, I'm perfectly okay with it and I want to see it. So best of luck to Evolution 2 if it does indeed happen. Unfortunately, last night I did not get to see any of the finals of the New Japan Cup. I meant to check it out on New Japan World. I'll probably take a look at that tonight. So, of course, I'm going into this thing blind, but I did read the results, and I did see that Evil wound up winning the Japan Cup and joined the Bullet Club after the fact, attacking Naito. So, and there was also like 3,000 fans in attendance there. I'm still yet to read up on that, but I can't wait to watch that just to see a show with fans. Not sure what the situation is in Japan in terms of their COVID numbers and stuff, but if they're allowing fans in the arena, 3,000 of them, wow. So anyway, that's pretty cool. And maybe, just maybe, wrestling is starting to come back to life just a little bit, even though I still think we're like a year away from that happening. And the other only little tidbit that I have written down is not really wrestling related, but sort of, and I saw it on Twitter right before I went live here. My old hometown of Detroit, Michigan, the Palace of Auburn Hills, where the Detroit Pistons play basketball, was destroyed today. They, of course, moved downtown. They share an arena now with the Detroit Red Wings, which also left the Joe Louis Arena. And the Pistons and the Wings now share a building in the downtown area, which is what most cities do, and which was a good move for them because Palace was all out in BFE. But the Palace is still very near and dear to my heart. I've been there. The Pistons won a few championships there, and it was the home of SummerSlam 1993, the big match with Lex Luger and Yokozuna, Bret Hart and Jerry Lawler, and all that stuff, and the Steiner brothers beating the Bodies in the opener there, or in one of the first matches of the show. Very fond memories of that time period and that arena. And WWE, I don't think ever went back there, maybe for a live event. They probably did a couple. But that's the only pay-per-view I can think of that was in the Palace. Every other time WWE went to Detroit, they went to the Joe and stayed away from Auburn Hills because, like I said, it's kind of way out in the middle of nowhere. So rest in peace to the Palace. Very, very sad. Home of SummerSlam 1993 and the home of a couple of championships for my favorite basketball team. So I just wanted to mention that just randomly because, like I said, the news is light. In terms of, well, actually, let me knock out a couple more super chats before we go in here to Raw because I forgot to say hello to Steven Myers, who popped in for $5, giving me a Stella. Thank you, man. I got a whole refrigerator full of Stella, but unfortunately, I got to head to work as soon as this podcast is over. So instead, it's the delicious Arrowhead water. So I will have a Stella tonight, Steve, on you, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Who's next? Steven Scott, good to see you as well, man. Thank you for the $5. If the Shield added a fourth member, who do you think would be good, CM Punk or Randy Orton? Didn't we talk for a long time about the Shield adding a fourth member? I don't remember having that discussion. If they had a fourth member, though, I think, you want one of those two, CM Punk or Randy Orton? I'd probably go with another NXT guy or something. I'd go Bo Dallas or something, or some other NXT guy they did absolutely dick with. Maybe Big E, although then we wouldn't have had the New Day. Somebody like that, maybe I'd stick in the Shield other than an established star. But then again, an established star would kind of give them that leader, like the Horsemen, like Evolution, like the NWO, like so many other factions. And I think if it's going to be between those two, I'd go Punk, because I think the Shield was originally supposed to shield CM Punk. It was supposed to be his kind of crew to watch his back, I think was the initial plan. So if it had to be one of those two, I'm going CM Punk on that one. But thanks again for that, Steven. And who's next? I believe Adrian popping in again. Always good to see you, man. Thank you so much. Good evening to you as well. I'm glad you're able to join us tonight. And hopefully we'll try to have fun with the limited amount of stuff we have to get into. Oh, yeah, Ray Durazo. That is one good thing about the Palace imploding, is it does maybe help to erase that horrible memory of the malice in the Palace. I'll still never forget that. I was working at the time when I was working in North Carolina at the beach. I worked with a guy from Detroit during the year that the Pistons won the title. And man, he and I really bonded. We watched every game together, that whole series against the Lakers when they just beat the piss out of them. And none of us we couldn't believe it because the Pistons were underdogs. And, you know, just seeing two Detroit guys like that kind of bond over that moment, it was so great to watch them win the title. The very next year, just a couple of games into the season, I'm at work and my cell phone is blowing up, and it's Toby, my friend Toby from Detroit, and he goes, "Do you see what's fucking going on right now?" And I'm like, "No, I'm at work." He goes, "Turn on ESPN right now." And I see the melee. I could not believe it. I was so bummed out. It completely tarnished, you know, to me, the title and how ridiculously good that starting five was. And it was just a sad day. And as much of a shithead as Ron Artest was back then, it was kind of Ben Wallace's fault. He kind of started the whole thing. So that's a very sad memory to me for the Pistons. But at least I can forget that now. Hopefully there'll not be a malice at Little Caesars Pizza Arena or whatever the fuck. So anywho, yeah, Ray. Well, the owner of Little Caesars, I believe, owns Pistons and the Wings, I think. So that's why it's called that. So anyway, that catches up the Super Chats for now. Let's roll into some of the wrestling results. As usual, you guys know I'm up here every single Monday night talking about Raw. So if you want to hear my thoughts on last week's Monday Night Raw, all of the matches, tune into check out my review from this past Monday. The only thing I do want to mention about this past week's Raw was the announcement of the Eye for an Eye match between Rey Mysterio and Seth Rollins, set for Extreme Rules. And we were all speculating Monday night after Rey cut that promo and said, "I want an eye for an eye match," or I want to rip your eye out with my hands," or whatever the hell he said. And we were like, wait a second. Is the rules of this match to actually rip out the eye of your opponent? You know, what the fuck? So we were almost like kind of baffled by it. But as the week went on and it got clarified to us, yes, in fact, that is the deal with this match at Extreme Rules. You're going to win by ripping out the eyeball of your opponent. And there's been a lot of talk. I think Meltzer was the first one to bring this up, that WWE is probably going to use some CGI type of stuff in this match. And if that's the case, then I'm fine with it. Because if this is a regular match in the ring, how the fuck do you even do this? You know, AEW did the Eye for an Eye match, right? With, was it Santana and Moxley? Or was it Ortiz and Moxley? Can't remember. They did that kind of in AEW back in the day. Vader's eyeball popped out in a match with Stan Hansen in Japan. So we've seen sort of some eyeball stuff, but what do you do here? Of course, you can't really rip a guy's eye out. So, you know, how would you even make that match happen if it was a regular pay-per-view in front of an audience? But since it's different times now and we're seeing a lot of cinematic type of matches, we might get as many as 3, or we are going to get 3 of them at Extreme Rules, with the Swamp and the bar fight and now this. So it should be interesting. I'm kind of like, when you look at Extreme Rules, I think that they're trying on this one. Extreme Rules is kind of like, to me, it's one of those in-the-way pay-per-views that we don't need. I hate gimmick pay-per-views because, you know, Extreme Rules matches and shit should be for when a feud calls for them. And, you know, Ray and Seth definitely does. But it's like Hell in the Cell. You just got this pay-per-view sitting there and you got to scramble together to put some Hell in the Cell feuds together. I just don't like it. But in terms of the card and how this looks on paper, I think I'm the only one in the wrestling community not shitting on the Extreme Rules card. I don't hate it. I don't even hate Dolph Ziggler and Drew McIntyre. I know who's going to win. Drew's going to win. But it should be a good match. I know that people can say, why the hell is Dolph getting a title shot? I don't know. When does WWE ever do anything that makes sense? To me, I don't care. It's going to be a good match. The champion that I like is going to win and retain. could just be a good, solid mid-card match or something. Probably go on. It won't be last or anything. It'll probably just be a middle of the way through or something like that. I think the swamp match, based on the deletion matches, can be really fun. Asuka and Sasha is going to fucking kill it in there. The bar fight might even be good. If it's anything like the old APA bar fights from back in the Attitude Era at Timmy White's place, might not be bad. And depending on what they do with the eye for an eye match, that might not be horrible either. It just depends. I think this pay-per-view has potential to not suck. Let's just put it that way. But in terms of this Monday on Raw, in 2 days, excuse me, they have already announced 4 matches, which I like, because one thing I was complaining about last week is how ridiculously predictable everything is. I'm so sick and tired of the promo, followed by somebody interrupting and cutting a promo. Then they brawl. Then you go to commercial, and you come back from the commercial, and the match is joined in progress. I fucking hate that. It is done 76 times per week, and I think they should at least try to come up with better ways to make a match other than just the same old cookie-cutter template that they're using. So to book a couple of Raws or shows here or there where you announce most of the matches, not all but most, I don't think is bad. And so far from Monday night, all 4 of the matches they've announced, 3 of them for sure are good. The other one has a potential to suck, but I kind of like that we know what we're going to see at least for half of the show or better. We're getting the Kabuki Warriors, Kairi Sane and Asuka, taking on Sasha and Bayley in a tag team match. Yes. Seth Rollins versus Kevin Owens in a WrestleMania rematch. Yes. Randy Orton versus R-Truth in a match that you're like, huh? But yes, that could be fun. And I have a feeling, I tweeted this out on Monday night. Do you guys think, just for fun, WWE will have Ric Flair win that 24/7 title? He had the backstage thing with R-Truth last week. I even thought it was going to happen there, like Truth would get attacked and Flair would lay on top of him. I don't know if Flair really wants that in the record books as the final title he ever holds, but technically it will be a way around his retirement because anybody can win that title. Referees are winning the damn title. Celebrities are winning it. Why can't Ric Flair? So maybe on Monday, R-Truth gets annihilated by Randy Orton. A couple of RKOs, gets beat down, and he allows Flair to come into the ring and pin him and win the title. Maybe. Might be something we see. Ric Flair winning a championship on Monday Night Raw in 2020. I'd actually think it was fun. Why not? It's pandemic wrestling. Who cares? Who cares? What does it matter at the end of the day? And also, we've got a very strange elimination tag team match with the Viking Raiders taking on Angel Garza and Andrade. Don't know why that's an elimination match there, and I don't know if that's a way for them to further the split or the dissension with Garza and Andrade, especially if one causes the other to be eliminated, leaving the other one to face the Vikings 2-on-1. So the Vikings have not looked very good lately, and I think they need a win here, and they need to capitalize on the dissension between Garza and Andrade, and I'm picking the Viking Raiders to win on Monday. At least I hope. So anyway, Monday Night Raw does not look that horrible, and maybe it won't suck. Let's move on to the very fun Wednesday night of wrestling that we had this week. Oh, be still my heart. AEW Fyter Fest and NXT Great American Bash Night 2. I was looking very much forward to both of these shows because I knew both shows were going to bring it. NXT really stacked up and created this Great American Bash as a way to combat Fyter Fest, which also had a lot of good matches on it. And on night 1, NXT scored a ratings win last week, as we talked about, and they did that on, basically on the shoulders of the Sasha Banks and Io Shirai match. And they came through in the ratings where AEW, of course, won that key demo. They had a higher overall cable rating than NXT, but overall viewers, NXT won in the ratings last week, and that sparked the big debate of the demographics. And you can tell, the AEW guys like the Alvarezes and the Meltzers, they cannot fucking stand it when they lose, and it just kills them, which I don't understand why. I don't know why this shit matters as much. At the end of the day, still, when you combine AEW and NXT, it's still less people than are watching Raw and SmackDown. But still, it's 1.5 million people every week watching Monday or wrestling on Wednesdays. So that's not a bad thing either. And to me, when you have two shows competing and the ratings are close and they're trading victories every week, the winners is not NXT or AEW, it is us. We are the winners. And on Wednesday, we were treated to some fantastic stuff. And of course, my eyeballs for this particular week, even though I'm completely neutral in the NXT and AEW battle, and you guys are going to be surprised which show I picked to win, or which show I chose was the better show this week. But my eyes were going to be heavily focused on the NXT main event, regardless of the spoiler. I was told multiple times during the week by people that I wasn't even trying to argue with at all. I wasn't even trying to spark a debate. But when we were talking about the Keith Lee spoiler that came out about him winning the title, a lot of people were telling me, there's no way NXT is going to win the ratings now because the main event was spoiled. I'm like, what kind of wrestling fan are you? Who cares? I don't really care. Like, maybe I just look at spoilers differently than others. I don't get upset if I get spoiled. It's fucking wrestling. I've been watching it for 40 years. Spoiler's not going to bother me. So when I see a spoiler showing Keith Lee holding up 2 titles, I want to watch that. You know why? Because Keith Lee is the fucking man. And I love him. And he's one of my favorite wrestlers across all of wrestling. So why would you not want to watch somebody that's overwhelmingly beloved by the mass majority of the wrestling audience? Who out there shits on Keith Lee? Point that fucker out to me. I want to meet him. Is there any wrestling fans out there saying dumb shit on Twitter about Keith Lee? He sucks. He's got a poor moveset. He's not marketable, or any of this other dumb reasons that they come up with for why guys suck. Nobody's saying that about Keith Lee. Even the assholes. They're not even saying it about Keith Lee. Everybody likes Keith Lee, and everybody respects the shit out of Adam Cole, and he's held that belt for over a year. So to me, regardless of whether or not you know the outcome, I am watching this match. Because on the other show, it's Jericho and Orange Cassidy, which to me is very interesting and was a just amazing match. I loved watching that match, but it didn't have as much at stake. It wasn't as important in the grand scheme of wrestling. You got 2 titles on the line here. You got a guy moving on to the next level. You got a guy dropping the belt after 15, 16, 17 months, whatever it's been. To me, that is a big deal. And that's what I was going to be watching. That's what I was going to be focused on. And that's why I assumed that NXT would win in the ratings based on the strength of that match and that match alone. And that's exactly what happened. The final ratings came in. NXT 759,000 to AEW's 715. So NXT won both weeks. But like I said, really, Bash to me was a one-match show. It was Cole and Keith Lee. That was it. Where AEW had a little bit more to offer, I think, in terms of the strength of the overall card. But to me, I was going to be focused on Cole and Keith Lee. That was a match I wanted to see. I wanted to witness Keith Lee's moment as it happened, or at least as it aired. And I would circle back and catch Jericho and Cassidy later. Now, if AEW had the more important main event, if they had 2 titles on the line in the main event, and, it was Dexter Lumis and Roderick Strong in NXT's main event, I'd be watching AEW. It just depends. I'm going to watch the more meaningful main event regardless of what show it's on, is basically my point. So I was not surprised that NXT pulled out a win on night 2 because they had the bigger match to offer, to be honest. But might have not been the best overall show. So let's talk about NXT first. Let's get into the results there. And after I'm done talking about NXT, I will hit the couple of super chats that I owe from Lysander, Zane, and Daniel. I got to hit you guys as well. We'll do that before we talk about AEW Fyter Fest. So anyway, Great American Bash Night 2 was pretty damn good. And I said early on that I was also interested in the Candice LeRae and Mia Yim street fight. I thought that was going to be better than maybe most people expected. And aside from Cole and Lee, that was the one match on the card that I wanted to see, and they opened with it, and it was great. You had these ladies all over the place. You had a food fight over by the catering area at one point. You had table bumps, really big table bump by Candice off the platform through the table. You had a ton of chairs out in the ring that eventually formed a pile in the ring. You had brass knuckles, and the great finish. I think it was a swinging neck breaker or a DDT. I think it was Candice hitting a neck breaker onto Mia Yim onto the stack of chairs, which was just a gnar slam bump on that. Ouch. And got the pin and won the street fight. So Candice LeRae picked up the win there. I didn't know who to predict in that match. I didn't really have a firm favorite. I thought that Mia Yim had a chance because she's just bigger, stronger, and I thought would beat the piss out of Candice. But Candice is a tough cookie, man, and she's done some pretty hardcore stuff on the independent scene. So I like that they gave her the win here, and it gives her great bragging rights with her husband that she would they would do in a post-match interview later on, even talking about going off and having sex and stuff. So good for Candice. She got a big win there over a very tough woman in Mia Yim. Bronson Reed and Tony Nese was kind of thrown together. Nese was in the ring already. He was working, I think, Leon Ruff or just beating the shit out of him, and Bronson Reed runs out there and chases him off. That leads to a match, and Bronson, beats him pretty handily with a top rope splash there. But again, that was kind of thrown together and as a match that didn't really mean a whole lot, so didn't really care about that one. We had Shotzi Blackheart in the back. She's being recruited by Robert Stone. He's still trying to beef up his little faction. She, of course, says no. Winds up running over his leg with the tank. I thought that was hilarious. Killian Dane was involved in that as well. Johnny Gargano had a match as well, along with his wife. Later on in the show, he defeated Isaiah Swerve Scott, and that's when Gargano and Candice were kind of bragging a little bit backstage when they both picked up wins on the Bash. But again, Gargano and Swerve was very good, but it wasn't a match that, to me had very big implications, and, was maybe more focused on Fyter Fest during that time. We had the big tag match, the six-man that was advertised from a week prior. It was Legado del Fantasma taking on Drake Maverick and Breezango. Pretty good match, but probably the weakest of the whole show, I think, because you knew the heels were going to win here. There's no way they're going to put them down to like Breezango right away this quick. And you knew Drake was going to have his moment to get his hands on Santos, which he did, hot tag and everything, but he gets tables turned on him. Eventually, Santos hits the Phantom Driver on Drake and pins him, stands over him, holds the title up, the whole deal. So hopefully, maybe that issue is done and Drake moves on to something else, or if he's going to continue to chase that cruiserweight title and eventually get it. Part of me thinks that will wind up happening for him, and it would be interesting considering he was at one time the general manager of the cruiserweight division. So for him to win the title might be cool, but I don't think that's coming anytime soon. I don't think. We had Mercedes Martinez beat Santana Garrett, who I really love. She's just a delight, but she got squashed pretty hard here. Mercedes, she had a hype package earlier on in the show as well. So Mercedes Martinez still looks very strong. Can't wait for her to really get into the mix in the title scene because she's been winning mostly enhancement matches and squashes up until this point. But once she gets in there, that's going to be all right. It's going to be good stuff, which, of course, leaves us with the main event, the match I was waiting for all night. Adam Cole, Keith Lee, NXT title on the line, North American title on the line. I was really interested in how this match was going to go because I knew it was going to be good because Cole always puts on good matches and so does Keith Lee, but I thought the dynamic would also be fun because of the ridiculous size difference here. And as good as Adam Cole is, I think that's probably one of his biggest flaws is that he's just not very big at all. He's quite small. So, we've all talked about Undisputed Era and Adam Cole going to the main roster one day, but, I kind of think they're better off just turning babyface and hanging around in NXT and staying together. I think a main roster move could hurt Adam Cole in the long run where, he still feels like he's got a good niche in NXT. And I think since he's been there, he's been a heel and the fans are really ready to cheer him. So to give the NXT audience a babyface Adam Cole for a little while before moving him to the main roster might not be a bad thing in the end. But this match was all we thought it would be and more. Probably some of the bigger spots in the match was Cole actually somehow pulling off a Panama Sunrise on Keith Lee, which I was wondering if they were going to do that in the match and how ridiculous it would look. But it didn't look that bad. It was actually quite good. Just lots of kickouts here, lots of power moves too by Keith Lee. And I kind of called out the finish here too. In my head before the match happened, I thought what would wind up happening in the end is Keith Lee would put him down so hard, like he'd hit him with like 2 spirit bombs or 2 big bang catastrophes. Whatever he did, it was going to be a double hard impact move, where he puts him down once and before he goes down for the pin, hits him again. And he kind of did that. He won with a spirit bomb followed by big bang catastrophe, which he has done in the past, but I thought it was cool that, he hit him with both of those. And a guy Keith Lee's size hitting those moves on a guy Adam Cole's size, how the hell is he going to kick out of that? And as soon as the cover was made, you knew that was the finish. We saw no Undisputed Era in this as well. I didn't think that Adam Cole was going to retain, even with the rumors that WWE might have filmed 2 outcomes to try to throw the fans off. I didn't see Adam Cole retaining as really being an option here. So if he did retain, it was going to take a lot of interference from Undisputed Era because Adam Cole beating Keith Lee clean just isn't something that makes sense right now, so you just didn't really think that was going to happen. So I wasn't sure if maybe they were going to go for the disqualification with Undisputed Era running in, maybe even Karrion Kross getting involved, or if they were going to push Keith Lee like Superman and have him fight off everybody. That's actually what I thought might happen. I thought Roderick and Fish would run out there and Keith Lee would fight them both off and beat the shit out of both of them and still corner Adam Cole in the ring and pin him for the title. But it was basically clean, no interference, which I liked, and I also have no problem with. Keith Lee pins Adam Cole, stands tall with the 2 titles. The confetti comes down, which is the picture we saw in the spoiler. Great celebration for him, and in just a nice little cherry on top of just a beautiful main event. The camera pans out to one of the the booths or the boxes up top, and you see Karrion Kross kind of peering down, just a great camera angle with Karrion Kross looking down in the ring, watching Keith Lee celebrate, and Scarlett is with him, and that's he's already kind of called out Adam Cole. He's made it known that he wants a shot at the title, so that's kind of a good little teaser there for what's to come. But there's a lot of us that think, is that a little bit too early for Karrion Kross? Do you want to just let him simmer a little bit, before, pulling the trigger so ridiculously fast? And now with Keith Lee as your champion, you don't want him dropping. I don't want them to Rhea Ripley Keith Lee, because Rhea only held the title for about 3 months. I think Keith Lee should hold it a little bit longer than that before dropping it to Karrion Kross. So what do they do in the meantime? Do they go directly to Kross and Keith Lee, or do they take a little detour and maybe have Adam Cole go babyface and take on Karrion Kross first, having Karrion beat him much like he beat Ciampa, beat him pretty emphatically there. Wow, he just beat former NXT champion, held the title for more than a year, and he beat him with ease. He's the new #1 contender to Keith Lee, and you try to drag out that confrontation as long as you can. Or somebody mentioned to me, I don't know where I heard it was on Twitter or something, it was directed at me though, maybe you do like a triple threat, because you still have that North American title on Keith Lee, and what is the future of that belt going to be? I had suggested holding the belt up in a tournament and giving it to Johnny Gargano, but maybe you do a triple threat because you think maybe Adam Cole, I know there's no automatic rematch clauses, but come on, the guy was champion for like 18 months or 17 months, whatever it is. He should get a rematch of some kind for the title, right? So maybe they make it a triple threat and they put both belts on the line, or just the North American title on the line, and maybe you give Karrion Kross the North American title first, winning it in a triple threat, pinning the other opponent other than Keith Lee to win the title. That way Keith Lee doesn't have to get pinned to lose the North American title. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be a WrestleMania 6 situation. When the Warrior won the title, they just stripped him of the IC belt. That doesn't seem like what they're going to do here with Keith Lee. He might actually have to defend this North American title somehow, and if they are going to take it off of him in a match, I think maybe it should be a triple threat in order to preserve his strongness as the NXT champion. Or they strip him and do a tournament. Either way, I think I'd prefer that belt to land on Gargano than Kross. I'd rather just see Kross take the Brock approach and just go directly for the world title, but just hold it off. I don't want to see Karrion Kross win the NXT title in October. I think that should be a January type of thing, or, beginning of the year, something like that. We'll see. But either way, congrats to Keith Lee. I think he's only the second black NXT champion. Big E. When was Big E was either the second or third champion. I forgot the order. Was it Seth Rollins, Bo Dallas, Big E? Or was it Seth Rollins, Big E, Bo Dallas? Maybe Neville was in there somewhere. But only the second black NXT champion, and I think that's fantastic. And there's a whole bunch of persons of color as champions right now in WWE when you look at the Street Profits and now Keith Lee and Apollo Crews. So good stuff. Good stuff. I'm a huge Keith Lee fan, probably one of the biggest, and I'm very, very, very happy for him. And good luck, big man. We'll all bask in your glory together. Next week for NXT, they do have the women's title match advertised. Tegan Nox earned that opportunity last week on night 1. She'll be taking on Io Shirai for the title. That should be fun. Tegan ain't going to win, but she's going to put up a good effort, and maybe Tegan can kind of have Tegan's already good, but maybe she can have the Orange Cassidy Jericho moment. Cassidy, like we're about to talk about here in a minute, looked fantastic. He looked about as good as a wrestler can look in a loss, which I think is exactly what AEW was trying to accomplish in their main event, and they did. So maybe Tegan can have that similar type of outing next week versus Io Shirai, but I think that match is going to be pretty good, and I can't wait. Love the women's division right now. Before we get into Fyter Fest, we'll knock out some more supers. Thank you, Daniel Rodriguez, for the $2. I appreciate it. Will you watch UFC 251 tonight and play Last of Us Part 2? No, I don't even know what Last of Us Part 2 is. And no, I won't be watching UFC. I got to go to work as soon as I'm done with this podcast, so I will be busy. I'm not a big UFC. I know a little bit about UFC, but I don't follow it that strongly. So there's some names I just don't know. Some people are like, oh, I can't wait to see this main event, and it's between two guys I've never heard of. So we'll see. Sometimes I watch those if it's a big enough fight. And I'm sure I'll catch plenty of the news and the results on social media all throughout the night. So, unfortunately, Daniel, I won't be watching either of those. Zane, appreciate the $10, brother. Thank you. What up, Mike Work? Happy Saturday. Rumors of McIntyre dropping the belt to Orton in the next possible feud. Yeah. McIntyre and Orton has got to be your SummerSlam match, right? I mean, if you're going to take the belt off of McIntyre, you need to have somebody that's actually capable of beating him, because McIntyre is a stud, but so is Randy Orton. So if Brock isn't going to be coming back in the near future, because we thought he might be back by SummerSlam, getting a rematch just like he did last year, facing Seth again, or he was champ last year, right? Going to that Seth match. Then yeah, Orton could be the guy. I don't know. I feel bad for McIntyre because his whole run came in the middle of this pandemic and stuff. So yeah, we'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if they put the belt back on Orton and him get another run, especially based on the work he's doing right now. He's doing some of the best work in the company, along with Sasha and Bayley and Asuka and Edge. And he's one of the top guys in the company right now. So I'd be fine with it. I've always had Orton's back, and if they put the title on him again, I'm not bitching. Lysander Smith, thank you, man, for the $5. Good to see you back as well. Hey, Greg, question. Name an underrated WCW pay-per-view pre-Hulk Hogan. For me, Wrestle War 92. I love that you mentioned that pay-per-view, because guess what? That's going to be a review this month. I'm going to be reviewing Wrestle War 92 in a full podcast review. That's going to be another Patreon donation video courtesy of Scott Moss, who I think is in the chat right now. So Wrestle War 1992 will be coming to the channel very soon. Oh, God, underrated. I can't pre-Hogan pay-per-view. I got to think. I got a bunch of them up there. I think Slamboree 94 wasn't horrible. That was right before Hogan got there. Maybe Halloween Havoc 92 or 93 I liked as well. I got to give that one some thought, because my WCW pay-per-view memories aren't as sharp as my WWE. So I'd have to kind of think about that one for a minute, but keep a lookout for Wrestle War 92. I'm really excited to do a review on that show. I was thrilled when Scott suggested that one and recommended it. I'm like, hell yeah, I'll do that. Before we get into Fyter Fest, you guys do me a favor, smash that thumbs up for me. Try to get those likes up for me. I would appreciate it. Please, y'all, hook me up with the likes. And let's talk about Fyter Fest. This show was good, and I got to say, I'm not going to save this until the end. When I look at both shows, even though I'm not surprised NXT won in the ratings, even though I kind of figured they would, and I predicted them to win in the ratings because I thought they had the stronger main event and the more meaningful main event that carried more weight, and it was the match that across both shows that everybody should want to see first. Despite the strength of that main event, Fyter Fest Night 2 was better than Bash 2. It was. I thought these matches on this show were much more action-packed. They had a lot more going on. There was a lot more fun. Where NXT, a lot of the matches prior to the main event, aside from the opener, I thought the girls knocked it out of the park with the street fight. But, Bronson Reed and Tony Nese and Gargano and Swerve and the Six-Man and the Mercedes Martinez squash and all of that, they were all good. But, when you compare it to the undercard of Fyter Fest Night 2, I liked AEW better. So I thought AEW had the better overall wrestling show. NXT had the stronger main event, which is why I think that they won in the ratings. But there's a lot to digest here on Fyter Fest Night 2. A lot, and there's a lot to get into. And I just think overall it was a better show. And that happens, because that happened on the other side of it. For many, many weeks that AEW beat NXT in the ratings, there were a lot of those weeks where I thought NXT had the stronger show. This is a situation where it's reversed now. I think NXT had the weaker show despite winning in the ratings. AEW was pretty much nonstop fun from top to bottom this past Wednesday. It opened up with a second title match in a row, 2 weeks in a row for Hangman Page and Kenny Omega. They defeated Private Party. A little bit easier than they defeated the Best Friends last week. That match felt a little bit more competitive. This match was really good because, of course, Private Party is extremely athletic, and so is Hangman and Omega. Good stuff all over the place here. They really brought it. You could feel that, it was the opener, and those guys were really going out there and performing hard to keep fans tuned in, because on the other channel you had Candice and Mia Yim beating the shit out of each other. So this match was going to have to be very action-packed with a lot of high-flying moves, and it had that. And I thought it was really, really good. I maybe give the nod to the females or to the women just a little bit, because they just impressed the hell out of me, especially with that finish. You expect Page and Omega and Private Party to have a great, fun, wild tag team match. Candice and Mia Yim, going to in a street fight, could have likely to see anything there. So I think the way they performed, I think I like that match better. But overall, this was a fantastic opener. Page and Omega retained the title, hitting the last call on Cassidy for the win. And good for them. They are still tag team champions, and that tag team division is solid. That tag team division in AEW has 1980s WWE level talent in it. the teams you had back then, the Hearts, the Bees, the Bulldogs, the Can-Ams, Demolition. You had some awesome teams back in the day in WWE, and this time period in AEW is the closest thing to that I've ever seen in tag team wrestling here in the States. I mean, really. I mean, Japan has had some good tag team divisions and stuff, but here in the United States, we haven't seen a division like this since the 80s. Even in the Attitude Era when they tried, it was still only a 3-team division. Hardys, Dudleys, Edge and Christian. Maybe Too Cool, a couple of other teams here or there. But really, this is the best tag team division we've seen in maybe 30 years or more, 35 years or more. So good stuff all around in AEW. They got a solid-ass division. We had the Bucks and you had the Lucha Brothers or Lucha Bros and FTR. Man, awesome division. So good opener there. Love that stuff. In the match that I was actually looking forward to most on the show, and I said this last week, it was my sleeper pick to really help Fyter Fest combat those ratings. I thought Archer and Janela was going to be better than it looked because Janela is outmatched, he's outmanned, he's outpowered, he's everything, but he had a little twist in there with his friendship with Sonny Kiss, and that being very interesting, and I thought that Janela and Archer could surprise us, even though I think at the end of the day we knew who was going to win. I thought Janela was going to be fearless and very, very aggressive, and he was. So he comes out to the ring. Archer comes out to the ring, I think, next, and he carries on his tradition of beating the shit out of somebody as he's coming to the ring. But this time, he's gotten his hands on Sonny Kiss, and he's carrying him out there, throws him in the ring, beats the hell out of him. And Janela and Archer go on to have their wild, wild brawl. Like I said, Janela taking, balls out here. He did not care. He was taking it right to Lance Archer despite being half his size. We had, lots of interference after that from Sonny Kiss, who tried to help out Joey Janela as much as he could. But eventually Archer would just really annihilate Janela hard and hit him with the blackout on the table on the outside of the ring, which was crazy. And the crazier spot, after he has him up and he slams him through the table immediately without giving Janela any time, not even 2 seconds to recover. He grabs his head and just starts slamming it on the table, and I love that. Just brutal shit. And picks up Janela, throws his carcass in the ring, and of course pins him for the big win there. But, Archer wasn't going to not win this match. We knew that, but I was really looking forward to just Janela being crazy, and it was one of the more competitive matches that Lance Archer has had in AEW, aside from the Cody match and I don't know who else he worked with, Dustin or whoever, but, most of his matches have been squashes with Jake there, talking shit and stuff. So to see Janela, let it all hang out here and really take it to Archer and have him down a couple of times. Jake Roberts even tried to get it to interfere at one point, which actually backfired. So Janela put up a hell of a fight here, and it's exactly what I was hoping he would do, because he knew Archer was going to win, but Janela, just being a crazy bastard like he is, I thought was going to help make this match, and it did. And I'm very happy with that. So good job to both of those guys. That was fun. This was probably one of the more controversial or interesting parts of the show, and to me a little bit baffling, was the Taz and Brian Cage promo. Of course, Brian Cage and Jon Moxley were supposed to wrestle on night 2 of Fyter Fest for the AEW title. That has been bumped to a week from now for Fight for the Fallen due to Renee Young getting COVID-19 and them holding off Moxley as a precautionary measure. So Taz and Cage were out there last week cutting a promo about the match. They're back out there this week, and Taz resurrects and unveils the old FTW title that he used to wear around in ECW, pulls it out and says, "This is the FTW title, and I'm presenting it to Brian Cage," and cuts his Taz promo and all of that. And to me, it was a great piece of nostalgia to see that title come back. I remember that title. I remember that time period well. Taz created that title because he was screwed out of the ECW title. And, he was calling himself the uncrowned champion, and he was introduced as the FTW champion, and he wore the belt and carried it around. So to see that thing back, and according to Taz, according to an interview he did or social media or whatever, apparently that is, or he's claiming, that is the original FTW title. They didn't remake that. So that's really cool that they brought that belt back. And I liked seeing it. I thought it was cool to see that old orange belt back, but it also confused a lot of fans. They're like, why are they creating a championship? I don't think it's a new championship. I mean, it might actually be defended in matches, but I don't think it's going to be a recognized title by AEW. I think it's going to be much like what it was in ECW or much like the $1 Million belt in WWE. just like an extra prop is all it is. But the one problem I have with this is not with the belt coming back. I think it's cool that it came back. It's why he presented it to Brian Cage before the match with Moxley. Like, am I crazy here? But does that kind of spoil it? Now, I'm not expecting Brian Cage to beat Moxley anyway. If I'm AEW, I'm not changing the belt off of Moxley right now. When it comes to the strength of those two guys, the star power, I think Moxley is much bigger and much well-known, much more well-known than Cage, and just a much bigger name overall than Brian Cage. And right now, with as tough as the ratings is with NXT and the pandemic and the COVID stuff, I'm just keeping the belt on Moxley, for the sake of ratings, I think. I don't know, what kind of numbers Brian Cage is going to draw as a champion, although, Taz can cut some pretty amazing promos. So I really wasn't expecting Cage to win the title, and I expressed my concern about that in the last couple of podcasts because, Cage just came in. I thought it was a mistake to have him win a number one contenders match in his first match in the company. That's just way too fast, and I think they've already made that mistake with Brody Lee and Lance Archer giving these guys title shots way too quick, and Cage is getting one even quicker than they did. So what the F, man? A little fast there. So how are they going to work that out when Brian Cage eventually does not win the championship? Unless they do a fucked up finish where he's screwed, where he can stay strong, so to speak. But if Moxley just paradigm shifts him in the middle of the ring and beats him clean, what does that leave Brian Cage to do now? Brody Lee and Lance Archer aren't necessarily buried or anything, but they're not viewed as the strong forces that they were prior to them getting their title shot and losing. So I wasn't sure how they were going to do that here. So this to me seems like something they would do after the match, like Taz did. Taz was mad about it. I think that's how it happened. That's how he brought the belt in. He was screwed out of the ECW title and he got pissed and brought in the FTW title. So if Moxley's able to beat Cage and he does something shady to win the match, pissing Taz and Cage off, and says Taz is like, fuck it, he had you beat, Moxley. You should not be the champion right now, but the management in AEW is not going to give us a title match because they're scared, because they know Cage is going to kill you, so I'm creating the FTW title. He's the uncrowned champion. I would see it going that way a little bit more than the way they did it. So I think the belt was brought in as something to keep Cage relevant. After he does not win the AEW title, he'll still be carrying around this thing instead. So that, to me, is why they brought that in, is because they probably realized, like we did, well, shit, we gave Cage a title match, in like one of his first matches ever. We don't plan on him winning, so isn't that going to, drop his stock a little bit? So if they give him this, I don't know what you call it, consolation prize or whatever, or participation trophy or something like that, to me, that's why this belt was resurrected, and I don't think it will be defended like Cody's title will. It's just going to be, an extra little prop, which, again, I have no issue with. WWE did this a whole bunch of times. $1 Million belt and a whole bunch of other dumb shit that they came up with, and AEW even has the ring that MJF carries around. So extra little fake championships are something that's been done in wrestling all the time, even in WCW. After Ready to Rumble, wasn't Canyon carrying around the silver or gold belt that they used in the movie? Wasn't he wearing that because he was Oliver Platt's stunt double, I think, right? So it's not a big deal. Don't shit on AEW for this. All the other companies have done it. It's nothing new. And to me, it's a nice little blast from the past. I liked seeing that. I haven't seen that title in 23 years or something like that, whatever it was. So thought it was awesome. Good for Cage, but again, it kind of spoils a little bit or telegraphs the Moxley match, unfortunately. But all in all, I'm not against the idea. It's me booking, I'm doing it a week later. That's all. Oh, was this match fun. 8-man tag, Butcher and the Blade and the Lucha Bros taking on the Young Bucks and FTR. This was more fun than the opener, and this was probably, across both shows, the most fun match. I mean, Cole and Keith Lee was just a masterpiece, of course, but when it comes to just crazy fun, spots, dives, flips, all that stuff, this match had everything and more, and was probably the most overall entertaining match of both shows of night 2, my opinion. Like I said, crazy spots. My favorite spot was the Canadian Destroyer off the ring apron onto the pile of people, or off the top rope. What was it? Really crazy Canadian Destroyer spot onto the pile. They all fall down. Spot after spot here. Amazing athleticism. And in the end, I was actually kind of hoping we would get this finish. We saw the heels getting the win here, which was cool. Matt Jackson accidentally super kicked Dash, which opened him up, or Dax, forgot which one he was, which opened him up for the LB driver, and he got pinned. And the Lucha Bros and Butcher and Blade won. And I cannot even think of a time when Butcher and Blade won a match. Just to see them there being announced as the winners with their hands being held up, to me was funny, because I can't think of any Butcher and the Blade victories. I think there's been one or two, but it seems like every time they get in the ring, they lose. So that was kind of cool. I like that. And we didn't get, if I remember right, I didn't write this down, but I remember the end of the match, we didn't really get the dissension that we thought, because the Bucks and FTR, are on the verge of feuding, but despite the miscommunication, they kind of shook each other's hands and were cool after the match, right? So I still think eventually we're going to get that showdown, and that's going to be fun as hell. It would be even more fun if a title was on the line there, but Matt and Nick taking on FTR, I'm ready for that one, and that's coming up. It's on the horizon, and again, that tag team division is pretty awesome in AEW. No complaints there. We had, this shit was funny. A couple of different segments here involving Big Swole and Britt Baker. Now, Big Swole has been suspended for the kidnapping incident, which is funny. Kidnapping only warrants a suspension and not a firing. Okay. Later on in the show, she gets past security and is able to confront Britt Baker, who's in her little mobile there. She winds up throwing something, hitting Rebel in the face, and her hand goes flying back and smacks Britt Baker right in the nose, and Britt's like screaming, and there's blood coming out of her nose, and I don't know who it was, the big guy with the fucking leaf fanning her. That might have been my favorite part of the entire week on both shows, was Britt being fanned by the big banana leaf. Popped hard for that. This looks to be a setup for Britt's nose surgery. I think she had to actually have nose surgery for the injury she suffered. Was it Hikaru Shida in the match where she got her nose and shit all busted up? So I think this was all kayfabed to set up her going off and getting the surgery now. She posted some pics from the hospital, all bandaged up. No surgery, just looks painful as hell. I hope I never have to go through that. And she's on the mend now. So that was all good stuff. It's very entertaining. Every single week, Britt Baker is sitting in that thing. I'm laughing my ass off. So some of her most entertaining work to me has been since she's been injured. It's just been fun. She's been great. This was interesting. We had Nyla Rose winning a tag team match, a handicap match over Kenzie Page and Kylan King. Just a squash, beats the shit out of them. And after the match, she actually gets on the mic and says that she's going to be getting a manager. Cool. Maybe that's what she needed. She dropped the AEW title. She's no longer the champion. She's still a badass kicking monster, but, where does she really go? Giving her a manager, somebody like a Taz, would be really cool. Now, I'm assuming this is going to be somebody new that they're bringing in, or maybe a face from the past, maybe a former female wrestler who's no longer in the ring. I don't know. I don't know who her manager could be. I haven't even had time to think about it or speculate or read who people think it might be, so I would love to hear your suggestions of who you think she might be bringing in. I actually think Taz might be a good option, and he could form a stable of men and women. I don't think it's going to be Taz. It feels like to me he's backing up Cage solely, but to me he would match Nyla just with the toughness and all of that. But, is Nyla going to bring in someone like Awesome Kong, or I don't know. She wouldn't be a very good manager, though. Trying to think any other female wrestler who's not wrestling, like a Mickie James or something, but she's in WWE still. I don't know. I don't know who it's going to be. It could be male or female as far as the manager goes, but putting Nyla with somebody, why not? She can talk a bit. It's not like she needs a mouthpiece, but, adding something to her presentation, I don't think is a bad idea, and it's a way to keep her, like I said, relevant, like I said earlier on. So, interested to see who Nyla Rose brings in. Oh, Vicky, that's a good option. That's a good idea. I don't think her manager will be Tessa Blanchard. I think Tessa will be wrestling. Vicky would be interesting, but man, she'd be obnoxious. She'd be so obnoxious. I don't want to see somebody that's like completely opposite of her. If you've got a ass kicking machine, I think your manager should be someone of the same type of personality, not an obnoxious, scared, cowardly Vicky who's just going to be screaming and running away and being obnoxious the whole time. Doesn't feel like her personality matches Nyla Rose's. But she's a woman who's available and there and around in AEW. I'd be down with that. Tessa would just be weird to me. Tessa would just be weird because it would just lead to a split and they'd wrestle. Tessa wouldn't be a manager forever. Even if she came in as a manager, it wouldn't last long. So I vote no on Tessa, but, maybe. I'm interested to see who it is either way. That's going to be fun. We had the Dark Order and Colt Cabana taking on SCU. Colt was in the trainer's room earlier on with this gigantic, just gnarly bruise on him, which somebody said was legit. Was it Alvarez? Somebody, some journalist on Twitter had said that was legit. I don't know how it could be. It looked like a ridiculous amount of makeup, so I don't know the story on that, what was going on with Colt there. But Brody enters the room, and, it seems very suspicious as to how Colt got attacked. It's probably the Dark Order messing with him. And Colt just seems extremely, naive in this whole situation. How dumb is he? How does he not see the manipulation going on here? Even when he comes out to the ring, it's like he's kind of just waiting for direction from Brody Lee, doesn't know where to stand, doesn't know what to do. And they wound up winning. They beat SCU. I think it was a tag. It was Brody and Colt against Daniels and Kaz. I think Scorpio is going to be focused on singles action now. They mentioned that on commentary, that the tag team versions of SCU will be Daniels and Kaz, and Scorpio will do more singles stuff, which is good. Love to see Scorpio maybe taste some singles gold one day. The dude is awesome. So we'll see where that goes. It's been more intriguing than I thought, because the whole Dark Order and Colt Cabana I thought was going to be a way down underneath storyline that not many people were going to pay attention to, but they've added a lot of elements here and made it now interesting, where I'm legitimately curious to see where this goes, because it's not going the way I thought it would when I originally saw the whole thing start with Colt on the outside of the ring and, the Dark Order messing with him and stuff. So I'm actually somewhat curious to see how this gets paid off and what Cabana actually does, and if it does lead to him donning one of those GIMP masks and joining the Dark Order. I ain't against it. Who cares? Colt's awesome. I support anything he does. And that leaves us with AEW's main event, which was great. I mean, you can't vote against Cole and Lee. You just can't. But if it weren't for Cole and Lee, this was fantastic. If it would have been any other match in the main event of NXT that didn't have a title on the line, or a world title on the line, I would be watching Cassidy and Jericho, because I was excited about this. I knew Cassidy would bring it. He's had some good pay-per-view outings already. Of course, he's got all the controversy attached to him, if he should be in the ring and his gimmick's a joke and all that. But when you watch him wrestle, he is fantastically athletic. I mean, he's just very gifted, and he's very good, and he knows what he's doing, and he put on a great effort here against Chris Jericho. And like Janela against Archer, he was all over the place here. He even tried to keep when they made the entrance to the ring, he was trying to hold off the best friends. He's like, no, let me go out there and do this on my own. I want to beat this guy by myself. Eventually, the best friends and the inner circle would all be involved here. Lots of interference. But Cassidy tried, to go out there and wrestle Jericho, and he did a great job. He didn't start out in the slow, normal way that he does. He took it to Jericho, and he was letting it all hang out right from the moment the bell rang. And he was hitting some awesome moves on Jericho. And Jericho, to his credit, was selling all this stuff very good. I was worried with Jericho and being 50 and his physical condition, what he can really do in there. But the way he was selling those, those tornado DDTs and everything that Cassidy was hitting him with, Jericho was keeping up with him, and I just loved it. And there was a ton of near falls. Cassidy, just like I said earlier, he looked about as best as you could. As best as someone could possibly look in a losing effort, is as good as he looked here. He kicked out of a lot of stuff. He even survived the walls of Jericho and had Jericho on the ropes, and you thought he might win. I mean, we even speculated here on the podcast last week that maybe Jericho puts him over. In the end, I was predicting Jericho to win, but I would not have been surprised, if Jericho threw Orange Cassidy to bone here and put him over. But he threw him a bone anyway. Luckily, or not luckily, but Jericho winds up nailing the Judas effect out of nowhere, hitting Orange Cassidy, knocking him right out, getting the pin. I knew this would end with a Judas effect. I knew it was going to be a finish where Cassidy was flying all over the place and Jericho would just nail him and put him down. But as good as Cassidy looked, this match was very, very, very entertaining. Even more entertaining than I thought it would be. I knew it was going to be a good match, but I had a couple concerns. Those concerns were eliminated watching this match. Very good stuff. And a very excellent main event. And it wasn't AEW's fault. WWE is the one that fucked up their title match. I don't think this would have been the main event. Although looking back, it probably should have, just based on the excitement. I don't know what kind of an exciting match you would really get in the ring between Moxley and Cage. But the title's on the line. It's got to be in the main event, especially if the title is on the line on the other show. So if that match would have happened as scheduled, I don't think Jericho and Cassidy would have main evented. They might have actually opened the show. But for a main event, this was great, and I loved it. And Jericho, of course, got the win. Cassidy looked amazing in defeat, and I think this will raise his stock. I always mention that that 03 Rumble match between Benoit and Angle, and I think that was the match, much like Bret Hart's loss to the Bulldog, that really put Benoit on the map. You know, he came up short Kurt Angle in one of my favorite singles matches of all time. He got a big standing ovation after the match, and a year later, he's main eventing WrestleMania, winning the title. Bret Hart, same thing against the Bulldog, losing effort, looks great. WWE crowns him as champion. Here with Orange Cassidy, losing the match to Jericho, but putting up a really good fight and really starting to become someone that is a force to be reckoned with. You know, Orange Cassidy, he might be silly and he might kick you in the shins, but he is not to be trifled with, and he don't give a fuck. He'll dive right off of something and land on you and attack you full speed. So I like Orange Cassidy. Jericho and Orange Cassidy are two of my favorite people in the business right now. You know, if I'm writing down my top 10, they might both be on it. So they're both entertaining, like them both, great main event, and overall, I am giving the nod to Fyter Fest. I thought Bash would be the better show. I predicted them to win in the ratings, and they did. But aside from that main event, I think Fyter Fest gave us a better overall wrestling show. I enjoyed the matches overall more than Bash. And that's that. So let me know if you agree with my assessment of these shows. I think it was very fair to both. I don't take sides. I don't care what side you're on. I just judge it the way I kind of see it. And I thought AEW, I thought Fyter Fest was better than Bash. But I was still overall very, very happy for Keith Lee because that was awesome. Big fan of his. So the good news in all of this is that Wednesday night gave us an amazing night of wrestling. Both shows were great. We had a lot of good matches, even in NXT. Some of those more, meaningless matches on the undercard, like Gargano and Scott, was still very, very good. So, Wednesday nights is the place to be. And I don't know why the ratings aren't higher. It feels like they should be higher. When we watch Raw and SmackDown and we watch the fucking shit that they feed us, why is every wrestling fan not abandoning Mondays and Fridays and going to Wednesdays? I don't understand. To me, with the state of wrestling that it's in, Wednesdays is the only thing good that we currently have right now, aside from some pay-per-views. So I don't know why everybody's not just moving to Wednesdays. So if you hate what you see on Mondays and Fridays, watch Wednesdays. It's awesome. Like I said, SmackDown last night, I did not really watch. I caught the YouTube clips. I had planned on watching it until I saw the reaction on social media, and it was not good. So I'm like, you know what? Not doing that. So let me just run through the brief results of SmackDown here. We're literally going to spend 5 seconds on this, and then I'll go back and catch up the Super Chats and talk with you guys for a bit before we get out of here. And I would really appreciate some thumbs up. Hit me with those likes, guys. Get them up. Please help me out. And after SmackDown, we'll also discuss the Extreme Rules card currently, which, like I mentioned earlier, in my opinion, isn't that bad. I'm actually one of the few people looking forward to Extreme Rules, and I cannot believe I just said that out loud. Anyway, SmackDown last night. Horrible show. Trash show. Lazy show. Phoned-in show. WWE did not even try, and I don't know what they were thinking and why they think this stuff is entertaining, but they booked a karaoke contest. Fuck-okie contest between Lacey Evans, Naomi, Dana Brooke, and Tamina. Now, again, I only watched the YouTube clips, so help me out. Did I imagine or dream of some vignette with Tamina like in a straitjacket and acting all crazy, looked to be undergoing a gimmick change, which we were all excited about? Or was that just in my imagination? Was I high or something? Like, why is that not happening? She was out there in her normal gear singing Triple H's song, sounding like a fucking giraffe with a hot poker stuck in his ass, screaming in this awful voice. What's the deal there? I thought she was like going in a different direction. I thought after all of these years, they were finally going to start trying something different with Tamina, and they've got her out here singing karaoke. What the F? All of this shit was horrible. Lacey Evans sang Double J's old theme song. I didn't even hear what Naomi and Dana had to say or sing. This led to a brawl, I think, which then led to a match between Lacey and Naomi, which ended in a DQ. So that was complete nonsense and horrible and cringy. And what the hell are they thinking? This is on Fox, man. God, there's such an embarrassment in pro wrestling. I don't want to tell anybody I watch pro wrestling. They're like, really? I saw it on Fox the other night, and I saw a karaoke contest. It looked stupid. That's because it was. probably one of the highlights of the show was Bayley and Sasha taking on Nikki and Alexa. And as Bayley and Sasha are making their entrances, Nikki comes out of nowhere and grabs a hold of Bayley and starts choking her out. That was great. Watching Bayley like freaking out. Nikki Cross is an absolute joy, and she is a treasure in the wrestling business. Sasha Banks and Bayley, though, got the win. I think Bayley wound up rolling up Nikki and pinning her there for the win. So big win for the champs there. And, of course, they've got a match this Monday against the Kabuki Warriors. And I'm interested in that outcome because Sasha's facing Asuka next Sunday. I expect Asuka to win, although doing the two women power trip could be a thing with both ladies holding world titles. But I still feel like Sasha and Bayley are headed for a showdown for the SmackDown title. And Sasha 3 shows. You know, everybody was bitching when Charlotte was on all 3 shows. Everybody was complaining that she was overexposed and it's too much Charlotte. I haven't heard one person complain about Sasha. So why is it okay for Sasha? Like, why is Sasha not overexposed? You know what I mean? Isn't overexposed just a made-up term to replace your hate for Charlotte? Isn't that really the truth here? Because they're not doing anything different with Sasha, and I don't see the same complaints. So imagine if Charlotte was one half of the tag team champions, and then she went to Raw and won the Raw title. Why does she have to have 2 belts? Why are they putting all the belts on one person? You know that's what people would say. Are people going to say that with Sasha? Probably not. But even though I'm not against Sasha beating Asuka, because I think the visual would be pretty cool of all 4 belts being on Sasha and Bayley, I think the story is just with the 2 of them, and you don't need to put all of your eggs in the basket of those 2, especially when Asuka is on fire and doing such a good job as Raw champion. So next Sunday, I'm keeping the belt on Asuka if I'm WWE. So for the match on Monday, if Asuka's going to win at the pay-per-view, do you think Sasha and Bayley pull off the win on Monday? Is that even a title match? I didn't look. Shit. Help me. Is that match on Monday a title match or no? For the tags? Either way, I think Sasha and Bayley should maybe win that match, and Sasha should go down at Extreme Rules, but I don't know. Either way, I'm keeping the belt on Asuka. That's just me, but I could be wrong. We also had on last night Jeff Hardy defeating The Miz. Sheamus showed up on the screen with a beer or something like that, and they had a whole video package earlier on in the night about Jeff Hardy and his demons, still harping on this, alcoholism and these personal issues that Jeff Hardy has. Some people like it, some people don't. It's just, to me, it's a little bit too much over the top. They're really ramming this down our throats, but it is leading to the big gimmick match at Extreme Rules, because you knew they already had a match on pay-per-view. Sheamus won. They're not going to do this match again without some sort of a stip, so it was announced that it's going to be a bar fight. And I'm assuming it's going to be a bar fight kind of like what we saw back in the day with the APA at Timmy White's bar in Rhode Island or wherever it was. And maybe something like that. And it probably will have some cinematic type of stuff to it. I'm sure it will be edited and pre-taped and made to look pretty good. I don't know if there's going to be like fake alcohol used there, of Jeff. I don't know if he's completely off the booze, but if he's not drinking anymore, it's not a good idea to be throwing alcohol in people's faces. They did that to Scott Hall back in the day, which, wasn't very cool. And I just don't know. I don't know Jeff's personal situation with his rehab, if he has got his alcohol drinking under control and he can do it in moderation, or if he had to cut everything out cold turkey 100%. And if that's the case, I would not be throwing beer in his face. So we'll see what happens. I guess it could be fake beer, but we'll see what happens in the bar fight. I don't know if it's going to be in an actual bar that WWE is going to pay the bar to destroy it, or if they're going to create their own little set. Don't really know. We'll see, but a bar fight has now been added to Extreme Rules, and even though I have not been a huge fan of the Hardy and Sheamus build, this match might be fun. Like I said, we need different stuff. We need some interesting type of matches. That's what WWE has been trying to give us, and we're getting 3 on Extreme Rules, so can't really complain about that. We had, and I think in the main event, was it the main event? Nakamura and Cesaro defeated the New Day. Or put them through a table. Or maybe I don't even know who fucking won that match. All I saw was Big E went through a table at the end, and Cesaro and Nakamura kind of stood over him. So I suppose that maybe they lost before putting him through the table. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Last night's SmackDown was meaningless. The 5 minutes of SmackDown I took the time to watch, I didn't even enjoy. So SmackDown is in timeout right now. The hell with them. We're not talking about them again. Maybe next week we'll have something to talk about, because like I mentioned at the top of the show, Matt Riddle versus AJ Styles for the Intercontinental title has been set for next week. But for me, if I had to guess here, because Riddle already scored a victory over AJ, and because he's kind of in the middle of a feud with Baron Corbin, that's what I expect to happen on next Friday, or this Friday, is for Corbin to interfere and either cost Riddle the match or get him disqualified or something like that, setting and giving AJ his win back at the same time and setting up Corbin and Riddle in a one-on-one match. And then if Corbin wins that, or I'm sorry, if Riddle beats him, which I'm sure he will, then maybe he gets another title shot against AJ. Maybe it's SummerSlam. AJ and Riddle for the title, SummerSlam, Matt Riddle and AJ Styles. Just that match on paper gives me a hard on. And we've already seen it once. So we'll see what happens next week. Should be good. So at least that's something on SmackDown, even though I don't think we're going to see a title change. Which leaves us with the Extreme Rules card. Let me run through this, and then we'll do some chatting. I got some super chats to answer. I'll answer some questions, hang out with you guys for a little while, because I was able to get all of my material in under an hour and a half. So it gives us some extra time. So in terms of Extreme Rules, like I said, we've got Drew McIntyre defending the WWE title against Dolph Ziggler. I think that match is going to be a lot better than it looks on paper. Bray Wyatt taking on Braun Strowman for the Universal title in the Swamp match. I think we're likely to see a lot of cool stuff there. Very similar to the Final Deletion stuff in the Compound match that they had in the House of Horrors match with Orton and Bray and all that stuff. And Boneyard match is going to be in that, in that sort of a style, I think. And I would really like to see, since we saw Heath Slater return to Raw last week for one night, and we've seen Drake Maverick come back in, I'd like to see Eric Rowan make an appearance in this match somewhere and show up in the Swamp match. I think that might be cool. We have Asuka and Sasha for the Raw Women's title. That might be the in-ring match I'm looking forward to the most. As a matter of fact, I know it is. In the ring, Asuka and Sasha is the one I want to see the most. That's going to be fun. I think I'm probably most interested in the Swamp match and the Eye for an Eye match. But in the ring, Asuka and Sasha, to me, is going to carry that show. Nikki and Bayley ain't going to be bad either. Nikki Cross and Bayley for the SmackDown title will be a lot of fun. Of course, like I mentioned a minute ago, we got Hardy and Sheamus taking on each other in the bar fight. We've got Seth Rollins versus Rey Mysterio in an Eye for an Eye match. Now, there's still news on Rey's contract. He still is working without a contract. He wanted a raise. WWE said no because it's a pandemic. They just released a bunch of wrestlers. They're not offering raises, but Rey stood his ground. He's like, look, assholes, you can afford it. And he stood his ground. He still has not signed a new contract. Apparently, he's working under the terms of his current deal, but he is technically free and clear to negotiate and show up anywhere he wants. And theoretically, he could show up on Dynamite any day. But I don't think that's going to happen. WWE would not allow Rey to work without a contract if they didn't trust him. And considering that Rey probably has aspirations for his son getting into developmental, I think that Rey will ultimately stay with WWE. And him not signing a contract, I think, is just keeping his options open for his money, so he can get his payday that he wants, and smart business, I guess. And with Rey probably going to lose, right? I mean, if he's working without his contract, how the hell is he going to beat Seth Rollins at a pay-per-view? You know what I mean? So I think Seth will probably beat him, and then after that, Rey could jump ship and go to AEW, which I would love to see, but based on the fact of, Dominic's future wrestling aspirations there, I think WWE will be the home for the Mysterios for a while. Just it's a matter of when Rey signs, and he's had a lot of in and outs with WWE. We've heard Rey is always like, I don't think he's difficult to negotiate with. I just think he, wants what he wants. And so there's been lots of talk over the years. I remember multiple times when Rey's contract would be up, we'd be hearing about negotiations. He even left for a short time, came back, things like that. So Rey stands his ground, and that's cool. Hope he gets his money. Make WWE pay through the nose. And that's the only matches we have official for the card. But and this will probably be set up on Monday, they're going to add Big Show and Randy Orton, which blows my mind. The Big Show and Randy Orton will be taking place on a pay-per-view in 2020 when we didn't want to see it in 2009. But here we have it, and I'm assuming that will be made official this Monday because Monday is the go-home show. So Orton and Show, I would assume, is going to be added. If it's not, they're going to have to do that on Raw or something. But one way or the other, we're getting that match, whether it's Extreme Rules or Raw. And plus, if Orton's going to get a title shot against McIntyre, putting down the Big Show en route to that probably is what they're going to do. All right, so that's it for my notes. I can answer super chats now. I'll answer some questions, and I'll see if you guys have any information for me in the chat about anything I might have missed. Lysander, I got you. Okay, I didn't miss as many as I thought. Zane, got you another one there. Thank you, man, for the $5. Having Cross win the title, same can be said for Riddle if he defeats AJ Styles for the Intercontinental title on SmackDown. Okay, well, you obviously just heard my thoughts on that. I don't think Riddle's going to beat him because he already beat him. Now, if maybe AJ would have won that first match, this could be Riddle's revenge. He could win the title, and it would be a way to get Riddle on the map quickly in WWE because he was in NXT for over a year, nearly 2 years, and never won any titles there. So, him getting on the map right away against AJ, I could see that, but based on what we've seen and with his feud with Baron Corbin, I think AJ will retain. Unless Riddle wins the title and then defends against Corbin and beats Corbin, that I suppose could also happen. But the only way I see AJ Styles losing is if for some reason he's got a nagging injury or something like that and they want to take the belt off of him. I think AJ will find a way to retain against Riddle, but Riddle will taste gold. I think WWE feels like they like him. And speaking of Riddle, I didn't mention this earlier on. He did. You guys can go over to his Twitter page and probably his Instagram too, although I'm not on Instagram. He did release a statement, a video statement on his affair with Candy Cartwright, explained his side of the story, and basically had to be very, very honest about what a shithead he feels like for cheating on his wife. Him and his wife have stayed together through this. They are working it out and putting their family first. They have children. So, Lisa Riddle has been, pretty vocal on social media as well, touting the stability of her family and trying to get past it. And we just all wish the Riddles the best, but this stuff is out there now. It has been made public, and Riddle has spoken about it. And he's adamant. He goes, I never, ever, ever have sexually assaulted or abused anyone. And, it's all the situations, like we said at the beginning of the Speaking Out movement, it's best to go read each and every story and judge for yourself. But there are some stories where there's just an overwhelming amount of evidence. And the only evidence here is that there was an affair. Good? No. Shitty thing to do? Yes. Illegal? No. It's consenting adults and whatever. And if Cartwright feels like maybe she was taken advantage of or something, she's posting a lot of pictures of the two of them kissing and all this shit. So to me, it seemed like a consensual fling, and it's more of just a he said versus she said thing. And there's really not any evidence other than the affair itself to really back up, I think, any of Candy Cartwright's claims. But then again, she ain't backing down, and she's got a lot to say on social media as well. So it seems like, Matt Riddle is at least owning up to his mistakes, but he's remaining firm that he never abused anybody and he never would. And yeah, we'll see. It's just ugly. It just sucks. I hate that people's lives have to be made public like this, and all this stuff is going on. But at the same time, you have to do your best not to be a shithead in life as well. And I think if you do something legitimately wrong and illegal, and if you really abuse somebody, as far as I'm concerned, I never want to see you again. But in Riddle's case, I think the evidence is a little stronger in other cases, and I think what he's guilty of here is being a really, really shitty husband and shitty dad, to be honest. But that's it, not really fireable offenses. There's lots of guys. Look at how did Bray Wyatt and JoJo get together? You know what I mean? Same thing. John Cena. A lot of guys have, had relationships and marriages break up due to affairs, on the road and stuff. So it's probably no different than that at the end of the day, but it's ugly, it's dirty, and, I don't want to speculate more on it other than what we've just heard from Matt and Lisa and Candy. So it doesn't seem to be affecting Riddle's status in the company or his push or anything, at least right now. And now that all of the statements have been made, it'll probably start fading away, to be honest. So we'll see what the future holds. I've been a Riddle fan since the day he came in. I've always loved him. I hated to hear that story about him, and I was really hoping there were no abuse issues there, and he didn't really do anything other than just being a shithead. So it sucks. Just hate that wrestling has to go through some of that stuff. But anyway, let's go to the next super chat. Joseph Finchman, good to see you. What up, Greg? YouTube pissing me off. I didn't get a notification for the stream, really. Oh, you know what? Speaking of YouTube, and thank you for the $5, dude, something really weird has been happening too, or has happened with last week's Winged Eagle podcast. I streamed it on Sunday. We came up a day later, but the video all week long never stopped processing. And the last time I checked, it was not even shown. Like, I tried to click on it last night, and it said video no longer available. But if I go into my video manager, I can see it. It says it's public. There's no copyright problems with it. It shows the amount of views, but when I click on it, it's not available. And it never, throughout the entire week, finished processing. And it's still not under my uploads. I have it under my podcast episodes playlist. It's there. But if you go to it, I'm going to click on it now. This live stream recording is not available. I've made it. It's not private. It's not unlisted. It's showing up on the playlist, and it's showing up in my video manager, but it never finished processing, and it never showed up under my uploads. It's just not there. And I don't know what to do. I made the video private and then made it public again to see if that, fixed it or evened it out or whatever. But last week's Winged Eagle ain't on the channel, and it's not available, and I don't know why. So that's kind of been confusing me for the past couple of days. Don't know. Not a big deal. The issue or the episode was an hour and a half long. It's all obsolete stuff now. I can just delete it. It's no big deal. But I don't understand why you can't see it. It's just weird. So I am sorry, Joseph, that you did not get a notification for this. That's been a problem on YouTube for many years. A lot of creators have said, have asked their subscribers, hey, are you getting notifications for my videos? That's why it's very important to click that notifications bell, even if it doesn't inform you. Maybe it'll help, and I'm always announcing stuff on social media. So, Joseph, if you are on Twitter, shoot over there and shoot me a follow on Twitter, because I always announce podcasts prior to them going live. Like an hour before they go live, I'll post a preview for it on social media. So there are ways to find out other than YouTube, but I'm really sorry that was the case for you. And Alex Parker, good to see you back again as well. Thank you so much for the $5. Did you ever watch the original YouTube shooters Bill and Doug with their WWE Sucks TNA Rules videos in 2006? Doesn't ring a bell. I don't remember. I don't know who Bill and Doug are. Are they still at it? They still doing their thing? Don't know. I don't remember them. I might have seen them, but I certainly don't remember. You know who I thought of the other day because somebody mentioned him and I completely forgot. I remember this guy. I argued with him once on Twitter like 10 years ago. Fucking Wrestling Jesus. He's got this horrible voice, or whatever, or whatever. And I totally forgot about that guy. And somebody had mentioned him, like, holy shit, Wrestling Jesus. So whatever he's up to these days, I hope he's doing well. I think we argued 10 years ago, but I got nothing against him now. I always thought he was just an obnoxious, homeless-looking idiot. But nowadays, wish him the best. Hope all is well. And sorry for our little beef that we had all those years ago. Chris Ludecki, thank you, man, for the $5. When Seth rips out Ray's eye, do you think he could have the fake sympathy angle going forward like Jericho's heel run in 1998? When you say he, you mean Ray? I don't know wait, when Seth rips out Ray's eye, do you think he could have the fake sympathy angle? Seth have the sympathy, like he's sad that he had to rip his eye out, or Ray have the sympathy? What did Jericho do? I don't remember. I'm trying to remember the Jericho. I remember Jericho's heel run. I don't remember him having fake sympathy. I remember Jericho's heel run starting by him losing matches as babyface and throwing temper tantrums. And then he started getting crazier and weirder and wilder. I am so sorry, Chris. I'm not 100% following your question. That's because I'm an idiot. It's nothing wrong with your question. But I think regardless of what happens in the outcome there, the post-Raw promos and shit should be good. Like if Seth rips out Ray's eye, is he going to carry around Ray's eye in a little jar or something? I think he's going to do that. I think he's going to have the eye in a jar and carry it around like a trophy or wear it around his neck or something sick. But I'd be into whatever they do there. But I don't know if it's going to be really like the Jericho heel run, because I thought Jericho's heel run was more comedic than anything else in WCW. Who can forget the 1,004 holds, right? Zane, thank you for another $5. Rey Mysterio loss will be a way to write him off TV. True, exactly, because he's working without a contract right now. He ain't going to win this match anyway. So if you lose an eyeball, it stands to reason that you're not going to be back in the ring real quick. And if it was real life, probably never again. And if they do rip out his eye and he does come back, how do they explain that? How do they if you rip out somebody's eye, I'm no surgeon and I'm no doctor. I don't think if your eye is ripped out of your head, it can be put back in and put back together. I think if it's ripped out, you ain't never seeing out of that eye again. It's not like a finger. If you chop it off, if you get to the hospital in time, you can maybe reattach it. I don't think eyeballs work that way. So if Ray really gets his eyeball taken out, how's he going to come back and wrestle one day with two eyes? It's going to be like Kane's burns. Remember when he unmasked? Kane, where are your burns? The whole point of you wearing that mask is because your face was so horribly disfigured that you had to wear a mask. But you took the mask off and you looked normal. So I don't know how they're going to reconcile that and how, whatever Ray's future is. And if he does leave WWE and goes to AEW and shows up with two eyeballs, You telling me that you really didn't get your eye ripped out? They lied to us, y'all. Cannot believe they advertise a match and they say they're going to rip someone's eyeball out and then they don't do it. It's false advertising. Assholes, WWE. How dare you not give us eyeballs? Michael Cuomo, thank you for $5. Have you watched USWA where Bret Hart was a heel in 93? Yes, I have. Against Jerry the King. I'm surprised USWA was able to cross-promote with WWF. Well, that was done because of Jerry Lawler. Jerry Lawler was in WWF, and I think it was part of the agreement, and WWE was helping him out. Bret, and I think Bret and Savage might have gone there as heels. Vince McMahon, if you pull up that footage, it's all over online. Vince, you saw early shades in 93 of like heel Vince. He did promos, like studio promos with the USWA title. And he was promoting a match, I think, between Lawler and Savage. And really being heelish, because at that time, Vince was just commentator Vince. Very over the top and very charismatic. And, oh, my God, what a maneuver and all that stuff. And to see him cut like a heelish promo like that at that time, you know, to Attitude Generation fans, they're not going to notice anything different about it. But to fans who knew Vince at that time, that was some crazy shit to see. And Lawler was a huge babyface for years and years and decades, you know, Memphis and stuff. So when, you know, the babyfaces came in from WWE, like Hart, Savage, and Vince, they were all heels. And it was kind of cool, the dynamic, how Lawler was a face in his territory, but a heel in WWE and vice versa. Cool dynamic there. And that was stuff back then that you could get away with because there was no internet. Because if there was an internet and you could watch all this shit online, it would be very confusing. You know, their behavior changing so dramatically between shows. But back then in the regional days, and the only, you know, way to really read results and stuff is in magazines, you know, you could get away with stuff because nobody really knew. I didn't know about that USWA stuff till a few years after it happened. It wasn't until the Attitude Era, I think, that I saw those Vince promos. So it was like 5 years went by before I even knew any of that shit happened. So that's why wrestling was awesome back then, because you could just get away with more stuff. But yep, I do remember that. And I have all that whole entire angle and all of those matches. I have all of them in my wrestling collection, video collection. So good stuff, man. Let's see. Let me go. Oh, Ralphus. Hell yeah. Oh, Seth. Thank you, Chris. Seth with the fake sympathy. Okay. You mean like the fake sympathy because he had to do something so dastardly, like pull out the eye? I guess it could be like the, you know, well, no, that would be a babyface issue, you know, like when Shawn had to retire Flair or something like that. I suppose Seth could do that, and he could, you know, whine and try to get sympathy from the audience, but being completely transparent at the same time. Yeah, I can see that. It'll be interesting one way or the other, especially because you know Seth is going to win. I just want to see that promo after the match. I want to see the promo the next night on Raw. I want to see that eyeball in a glass jar on a string around Seth's neck. My screen looks very blurry right now. Let me cut that away real quick. Well, for some reason, my camera's a bit blurry. Sorry about that. I don't know why. I'm blurry. I'm out of focus, man. All right. What else do I have up here? Oh, sorry, How Weezy. You sent me a super chat. How'd I miss you? If I'm going to miss anybody, I don't need to miss How Weezy. And I know, oh, shit, who was it? I missed somebody last week, too, when I was going back and reading through them. I'm like, oh, shit, I never answered that one. I forgot who it was, and I'm really sorry. And How Easy, thank you for reminding me about that, and thank you for the $2. Love the fact AEW is bringing back managers. They're bringing back a lot of managers. And now with Nyla Rose being there, you got Taz, you got Tully, you got Jake, you got Arn. I'm really interested who Nyla Rose is going to bring in, and that's good because it's a you know, connection to the old days when we saw so many managers and how WWE literally doesn't have any anymore. Well, I guess they have a couple, Malcolm Bivens and Stone and those guys, but you know, they don't bring any, you know, real veterans anymore. It's nice to see Jake there and Arn and Tully and stuff. So I'm all for the managers. And I'm curious. Oh, that's a good one. Ryan Rhoda. I like that. Jazz. Can Jazz talk? I'm trying to think how many promos I've heard Jazz cut. Not many. I can't even think of one, to be honest. You know, again, like, I think Nyla is, like, pretty solid on the mic. You know, not great. She's not The Rock or anything, but she doesn't suck. So does she even need a mouthpiece? And if she does, you know, maybe the mouthpiece will be a little bit more like a Tully or an Arn, because they don't talk for Cody or Shawn. They almost talk with them, or they add to it or whatever. They're not like the full on, like Cornette would be, you know, just talking for all of his guys. So it's going to have to be a combination to where both, you know, can have some things to say. And I'm just curious who it's going to be. And I'm curious if it's going to be male or female manager. Can't wait to find out. DX Cena for like, who the hell is Pockets? What the hell does that mean? Thank you, Mr. E. Good to see you. Mr. E 1976. I am doing very well. And everybody, I hope, is too. I think that's probably my least favorite phrase. It's the most overused and repeated phrase. I don't know why when Jim Cornette vomited out that Outlaw Mud show, boy, the fans clung to that. My God, they should put it on the goddamn bumper sticker on their car. You know, I dare you to say Outlaw Mud Show. Like that, I don't even know what that means. I do not view AEW as an Outlaw Mud Show at all. I view it as damn fucking good wrestling. And to subscribe to that hate, I think, is stupid and a waste of time. And that's why I thought, you know, some of the ratings arguments all week long with the demo stuff and all that stuff. And I'm like, am I the only one that, like, is happy that we got two really awesome shows on Wednesday night? As wrestling fans, isn't that what we want? You know, we complain every week about what we see on Raw and SmackDown and how awful it is and how lazy it is and how wrestling is just being ruined and what the fuck. And here we find ourselves on Wednesday night treated to two amazing shows with a lot of good matches, title changes, crazy stuff happening, really good wrestling, and the next day, instead of rejoicing in the fact that we actually have good wrestling to watch in the middle of a pandemic, we're ripping each other's throats out about stupid ratings and about taking sides. And, you know, to me, I see so much bias on Twitter because once fans decide what side they're on, they start skewing all their opinions based on that hate for the fans on the other side. And it's one of the most annoying things. It is the most annoying things about wrestling fans today is that they cannot let it go. Social media has ruined wrestling. It's a good thing this wasn't around back in the Attitude Era because now if you get the AEW hardcore fans, which I know are annoying, but they don't bother me. Like they don't flood my timeline with bullshit. I don't know why people want to follow 5,000 people on Twitter, but when you do that, you're probably going to get angry from time to time when you read all sorts of bullshit, and then you're going to be so mad at those fans that you're going to actively root against AEW just to piss them off. And to me, like, what kind of a miserable, unhappy life must you live to base whether or not you like a wrestling show on your hatred for other fans? Am I in the Twilight Zone here? You know, I see relatively level-headed and smart people ripping AEW apart because they don't like the other fans. And yeah, people like whoever the fuck said it, Sam or whoever, you know, Outlaw Mud Show. Why are you saying that? Like, do you honestly believe that? Are you 20? Because there's no way a wrestling fan of any sort of age and with any memories of real history of the business would view that show as an Outlaw Mud Show. This is only an impressionable child that repeats what they hear because it's just not true. You know, and Jim Cornette is so angry. I don't think he necessarily even hates AEW. He hates the fans. And that's why he goes so hard and he just triples down on the hate for Kenny Omega and these great wrestlers that they have there that are far more athletic than the Midnight Express and even the Rock and Roll Express and a lot of teams and wrestlers that were around in the 80s. They're a hell of a lot more talented, at least in the ring, than those guys. And what they do now is no sillier than anything Jim Cornette ever did. He was a comedic manager. He was always getting spanked by women or getting food dumped on him or getting his pants pulled down or whatever, carrying a fucking tennis racket around, and he's going to pass judgment on silliness today? Nobody must have watched. Like, you don't have any idea about the NWA if you think today's wrestling is more silly than it was back then. You don't watch. You don't know. You're making this shit up off the top of your head. Because if you watched it and you knew what happened back then, you wouldn't have this opinion. So I think people are just highly impressionable. They hear and believe what they want to believe, and they just run with it. And I think it's foolish and it's stupid to argue with each other instead of kind of coming together, you know, and saying, wow, NXT and AEW are fun. A couple of weeks, I've tried to do the split screen thing, and it's tough to watch it that way, but it is fun. You know, to have one show on mute and the other one on volume and just kind of watch both and try to watch the more important parts of the show. It's just like nonstop 2 hours of action. And that's a hell of a lot more than we can say for Mondays and Fridays. Like, you don't have to look any further than 24 hours ago, less than 24 hours ago, when we were sitting here watching the worst SmackDown in the history of the world, 2 days after a great night of wrestling. And all you've seen on Twitter isn't high fives from the wrestling fans saying, fuck yeah, at least we have Wednesdays. No. They're ripping each other apart over their stupid tribal bullshit over which show they think is better. And I think if you waste that much of your time worrying about arguing with fans on the other side, there's no, and I don't want to say anything about anybody's personal life, but I don't see how you can be a happy individual. I don't see how you can be happy in life, stable in life, have a positive outlook, or anything like that with an attitude like that. You must be balls crazy miserable, and you must be a depressed person, because after a night of wrestling like that, the last thing in the world I'm going to do is go on social media and be a dick to someone. I'm just not. What a waste of time. There are better things to do with your life than that. I just cannot believe that even when we're given good wrestling, the wrestling fans still can't enjoy it. When we're given bad wrestling, we hate it. When we're given good wrestling, we hate it. Explain to me the logic. If somebody can explain it logically to me, then I will fucking listen to it, but I can't think of any reasonable excuse for why wrestling fans act that way other than the same reason fans support their sports teams and hate the other teams. You know, they don't care. Doesn't matter what the truth is. It matters what their skewed, biased opinions are telling them. And they're going to stay that course and they're not going to deviate from it. And I think it's stupid. Absolutely stupid. Fans need to grow up. That's Uncle Greg's lecture for the day. All right. I think I am about done. Who's next? Chris Miner, good to see you again. Thanks for popping in with $5 more. Seth will hold Ray's eye like Chubbs held the Gator's eye in Happy Gilmore. That would be awesome. I put on Twitter that I said, I think the stipulation in the match should be, you know, you have to rip the opponent's eyeball out and you have to hold it in the air, hand it to the referee, and he has to taste it to make sure it's a real eyeball. Because it could be a fake eyeball. And since it's a horror show, I'm sure there's plenty of horror movies where people eat eyeballs. So it would probably go with the horror show theme of Extreme Rules. So, and isn't it funny how they switch the names like randomly? They're so stupid. Like the fact that WWE spends so much time worrying about the order of the words in the pay-per-view. If they spent as much time worrying about that, or as much time worrying about, you know, the in-ring quality of the product and the storylines and the creative aspect of the shows as much as they micromanage little dumb shit like this, maybe we'd have some better wrestling. But it went from Extreme Rules, the horror show, to now it's the horror show at Extreme Rules, which last Monday night on Raw, within the first 3 minutes of the show, they said it 17 damn times. And that was ridiculous. So I don't care what the pay-per-view is called. I don't know why it needs a tagline. Could just be called Extreme Rules to me. But since they're ripping eyeballs out and wrestling in swamps, they added the horror show tagline, which is fine. I just think it's dumb. And WWE is so dumb. God, they're so dumb. Okay, but like I said, I think Extreme Rules ain't going to be bad. All right, let's see. What else do I have to say here? We got another mature person in the chat here. Very mature. I'm sure you've got a girlfriend and everything. You probably live a really happy life. I'm sure you're really John Moxley, too. I'll just go ahead and get rid of you, you dumb prick. You are the weakest link. Let me see. Some people need to get laid and have a life. Yeah, based on the arguments I see over the fucking ratings on Wednesday, we are swimming in a sea of virgins, as they said in Grandma's Boy. Curtis Butler, I'm with you, man. I love both shows. Let's talk. I'm like that. I'm like you, man. I couldn't imagine like just hating on a show just because of the fans. Well, I can't imagine that because, like I said, I might lecture the fans and I might get on their case, but in full disclosure, I'm guilty of the same thing. I mean, back in the day in WCW and the Monday Night Wars, I've said this recently too, that I've grown as an adult, I've grown to appreciate some of the Nitros more. And I still watch Nitro. I still really like the NWO. And there's still a lot of things, even at the time, even when I was against WCW, that I liked about WCW. But I was probably a little bit biased in my opinions. That because I was fucking 20. And that's the way the 20-year-olds now. They're idiots. They're biased. Sorry to all the 20-year-olds in the chat. It's just true. I was no different. I was a dumbass when I was 20. So I had a lot of the same bias back then because the war was so, was just so intense. The hatred between the two companies, the giving away the results, Bischoff and Vince literally hating one another, and all the shady, dastardly tricks that were being pulled by WCW and WWE, the back and forth. And I thought back then that WWE had the better product, and I didn't like that WCW was literally buying all the talent and bringing them over there, and I was resentful towards that. So I would root against WWE and even claim Raw was the better show even on weeks that it wasn't. And I'm really happy that I've learned from that, and I don't make those mistakes anymore, because if I had that mentality now, I wouldn't have picked AEW as the better show. Even though I predicted NXT to win the ratings this week, when I judged Fyter Fest Night 2 and Bash Night 2, aside from Cole and Lee, AEW gave me the more entertaining show, easily, on Wednesday night. But, old Greg might not have had that opinion. Old Greg might have just stuck to his guns and claimed, the other show was better, even then when in my heart of hearts, I didn't truly believe it. So I think that's just a lot of the big problems with the wrestling fans now. And now it's just over the top, because instead of back in the day during the Monday Night Wars, where all of these thoughts were just ricocheting inside my own skull, now you have social media to vomit this bullshit out. And that's when it gets annoying. That's when the arguments start. That's when the infighting and the nastiness starts. And that's when the name calling starts and the blocking gets out of control. And Meltzer and Alvarez are attacked just because they like AEW. You guys are just shills and all that stuff. I'm like, none of that shit bothers me at all. I don't care. Everybody, calls out. Everybody's mad at Ryan Satin. You're a WWE shill. Mad at Meltzer, an AEW shill. Everybody apparently is a shill. No matter what. Like, you literally can't say anything good about either company, and then you're going to be attacked by a bunch of morons that think, oh, you're just trying to get, whatever. It's just, goddamn, just jealousy and all that stuff is just running wild throughout the wrestling universe, and wrestling fans are just, they are the worst, except for us. 216 people in the chat plus me. 217 of us are awesome. Everybody else is dumb. Dumb. Oh, wrestling. But anyway, I got to get out of here. I have got to go to work. So I will see you guys on Monday night. And after that, I will see you again on Thursday for the Territories live stream. So you guys have a great rest of your day, a great rest of your weekend. Make sure you subscribe, like this video, share it. Shoot me a follow over on Twitter at GoodMicWork. And if you want to catch the audio to this episode, I will have it posted on the websites, and it'll be available on Stitcher and Spotify and iHeartRadio and all that stuff later on tonight, but it'll be a few hours from now because I got to go to work first. So probably around midnight my time, which is 8 hours from now, it'll be available if you want in MP3 form. So thank you again, guys. I appreciate it. Fun podcast as always. You guys are the best. And I will catch you guys on Monday night. Y'all be good. Peace.